A suicide weapon is a weapon or object that is used in a suicide attack, typically based on explosives. History. Suicide weapons have been used both in conventional warfare, as well as in terrorism. Moro Muslims who performed suicide attacks were called magsable, and the suicide attacks were known as parangsable. The Spanish called them juramentado. The idea of the juramentado was considered part of jihad in the Moros' Islamic religion. During an attack, a juramentado would throw themselves at their targets and kill them with bladed weapons such as barongs and kris until they themselves were killed. The Moros performed juramentado suicide attacks against the Spanish in the Spanish-Moro conflict, the Americans in the Moro Rebellion, and against the Japanese in World War II. The Moro juramentados aimed their attacks specifically against their enemies, and not non-Muslims in general. They launched suicide attacks on the Japanese, Spanish, Americans and Filipinos, but did not attack the non-Muslim Chinese since the Chinese were not considered enemies of the Moro people. The Japanese responded to these suicide attacks by massacring all the relatives of the attacker. Muslim Acenas from the Asa Sultanate performed holy war known as Parang Sable against invaders such as Americans in the attack on Joseph Peabody's ship Friendship, the First Sumatran Expedition and the Second Sumatran Expedition, and against the Dutch in the Dutch expedition on the west coast of Sumatra and most notably during the Asa War, where they performed suicide attacks as part of Parang Sable. It was considered as part of personal jihad in the Islamic religion of the Acenas. The Dutch called it a jamoord, asemerd, asemord, asemord, or Asa Pungo. The Acenas' work of literature, the Hikayat Parang Sable, provided the background and reasoning for the Asemord Acenas suicide attacks upon the Dutch. The Indonesian translations of the Dutch terms are Asebodo, Asa Pungo, or Asa Hila, Asemord. A jamoord was also used against the Japanese by the Acenas during the Japanese occupation of Aceh. The Acenas ulama, Islamic clerics, fought against both the Dutch and the Japanese, revolting against the Dutch in February 1942 and against Japan in November 1942. The revolt was led by the Al-Aceh Religious Scholars Association, PUSA. The Japanese suffered 18 dead in the uprising while they slaughtered up to 100 or over 120 Acenas. The revolt happened in Bayu and was centered around Tjat Plian village's religious school. During the revolt, the Japanese troops armed with mortars and machine guns were charged by sword-wielding Acenas under Tunku Abdul Jalil, Tengku Abdul Jalil, in Buloh Gampong Tiunga and Tjat Plian on 10 and November 13. On May 1945 the Acenas rebelled again. The original JY script Acenas language work Hikayat Parang Sable, W.A.S. Hikayat Parang Sabi, W.I.D. Hikayat Parang Sabi, has been transliterated into the Latin alphabet and annotated by Ibrahim Alfian, Tuku, published in Jakarta. Parang Sabi was the Acenas word for jihad, a holy war, and Acenas language literary works on Parang Sabi were distributed by Islamic clerics, ulama, such as Tiunku de Tiro to help the resistance against the Dutch in the Asa War. The recompense awarded by In Paradise detailed in Islamic Arabic texts and Dutch atrocities were expounded on in the Hikayat Parang Sable, which was communally read by small cabals of ulama and Acenas who swore an oath before going to achieve the desired status of martyr by launching suicide attacks on the Dutch. Parang Sable was the Malay equivalent to other terms like jihad, Ghazawat for holy war. The text was also spelled Hikayat Parang Sabi. Fiction novels like Saif Muhammad Isa's Sable, Prahara Dibumi Rongkong on the war by Asa against the Dutch include references Aro Hikayat Parang Sable. Mualim Bunsa Syam Muhammad wrote the work called Motives for Parang Sable in Nusantara, Motivasi Parang Sable di Nusantara, Kajian Kitab Ramalan Joyaboyo, Dalelo Kare, Dan Hikayat Parang Sable on Indonesia's history of Islamic holy war, jihad. Children and women were inspired to do suicide attacks by the Hikayat Parang Sable against the Dutch. Hikayat Parang Sable is also known as Hikayat Parang Sabi. Hikayat Parang Sable is considered as part of 19th century Malay literature. In Dutch-occupied Aceh, Hikayat Parang Sable was confiscated from Sabi's house during a police raid on September 27, 1917. In the Second Sino-Japanese War, Chinese used suicide bombing against the Japanese with explosive vests. A Chinese soldier detonated a grenade vest and killed 20 Japanese at Sihang warehouse. Chinese troops strapped explosives like grenade packs or dynamite to their bodies and threw themselves under Japanese tanks to blow them up. This tactic was used during the Battle of Shanghai, where a Chinese suicide bomber stopped a Japanese tank column by exploding himself beneath the lead tank, and at the Battle of Taizhuang where dynamite and grenades were strapped on by Chinese troops who rushed at Japanese tanks and blew themselves up. During one incident at Taizhuang, Chinese suicide bombers obliterated 4 Japanese tanks with grenade bundles. The Pacific War of World War II bore witness to the Japanese kamikaze suicide attack pilots. Kamikaze was not a term used by the Japanese themselves. Late in the war, as the tide turned against Japan, kamikaze pilots were deployed to attempt to crash their aircraft into American and Allied ships in the Pacific. The Japanese even developed specialized aircraft for the tactic, such as the Yokosuka Oa flying bomb. A successful kamikaze attack would both kill the plane's pilot and damage the target ship, possibly even sinking it. Related tactics included the Kaiten suicide minisub, a human torpedo which a single Japanese pilot would steer into an Allied ship. North Korean tanks were attacked by South Koreans with suicide tactics during the North Korean conquest of the South. American tanks at Seoul were attacked by North Korean suicide squads, who used satchel charges. A North Korean soldier named Lee So-bok, who exploded an American tank with a suicide bomb, is hailed as a hero in North Korean propaganda. Certain aircraft built or projected for the Luftwaffe during the time of the Allied bombing before the surrender of Nazi Germany in World War II, such as the Bachem BA-349, Fliegend Panzerfaust, Sombold So 344, Zeppelin Rammer or the Blom and Voss BV-40 are sometimes listed as suicide weapons. However, they were not intended as such, even though the chances of survival would have been very limited for the pilots of such dangerous artifacts. In those years Nazi authorities considered the use of Selbstopfer, suicide, planes such as the Messerschmitt Me 328 and the Fieseler 103. During the Cold War, it was argued that the doctrine of mutual assured destruction turned nuclear weapons into suicide weapons. The idea of a doomsday weapon took this to its logical extreme. Political groups using suicide weapons in the post-Cold War era include mainly outfits affiliated to Islamic terrorism, among which even children have been used in order to escape detection when carrying out suicide attacks. However, non-Islamic groups, such as the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, also have been prone to use suicide weapons. Today, the most common suicide weapons used to carry out terrorist attacks are car bombs or truck bombs, as well as anti-personnel bombs carried by a single person. Suicide bombers strap explosives, often covered with nails, screws, or other items intended to act as fragments, to their bodies or otherwise carry them into populated areas and detonate them. The Tamil Tigers of Sri Lanka are known for having made high-profile use of this method in the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. Similar methods have been also used by Palestinian terrorist groups in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, among others. Kamikaze attacks were mimicked in the September 11, 2001 attacks, in which a group of mostly Saudi terrorists destroyed the World Trade Center and part of the Pentagon by flying hijacked civilian aircraft into them. It was the first time in history that civilian airliners filled with fuel were used as a weapon against targets of such magnitude.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.